Coaches, today before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, CoachPad. No matter if you draw scout cards by hand or use a program on your computer, the CoachPad will give you back time by never stuffing a binder again before heading out to practice. First 13.3-inch electronic device allowing coaches to clearly display scout cards outdoors in the sun has been a game changer for programs this past fall and those currently planned all across the country. This new technology allows coaches to coach and not the monotonous task of stuffing and dealing with binders on the practice field. Check out the CoachPad and CoachPad Mini on thecoachpad.com. Please make sure you check out our sponsors, our affiliates, and here is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. I can't enunciate today, obviously. Today we have Coach Eric Firestone with us. He is the defensive coordinator at Gardendale High School in Alabama. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good, Coach. Doing good. You get to enjoy nice weather, and I get to freeze, and so we're all happy. I mean, that's just
yeah.
I mean, we got a snowstorm coming our way for this later this week, so it'll be interesting. And the irony is, by the time this post, snow will be all gone. So, but kind of before we get into I mean, you've spoken on it. I saw you speak either, what was it, for Gardendale or Football Scoop? I don't remember where. Football Scoop. Before we kind of get into any of that stuff and kind of give your background so people can understand how you ended up at Gardendale.
This is my 19th year, so I've been doing it for a while. I started my first couple of years at a middle school in Texas, Sanger Middle School, and then I'm originally from Alabama, so me and my wife wanted to move to get back closer to home. I was at Talladega High School for a couple of years. I was the defense coordinator my second year there. I had no clue what I was doing, but it was a lot of good experience for me. Moved on, went to Hillcrest High School for 4 years. I coached both defensive line and the offensive line there. So I had a huge learning curve there, being able to do a little bit of both. Then I got my opportunity to be a defense coordinator again, worked for one of my good friends, Will Wagnon, at Montford High School. I was there for 4 years. We had some good success, and then we moved on to Hazel Green High School in Huntsville. I was a defense coordinator there for 3 years, and then after that we all kind of broke up and went our separate ways, and then I've been at Gardendale for the last 4 years. So I was lucky to become a defense coordinator again here. And one new thing for me is my oldest is in 9th grade this year, so we've been on the same team together for the first time. So that's been a pretty cool experience.
Like, do you want to talk about that? Because I mean, I've always how do I want to phrase this? Because I have a daughter. She's 12, and I work with her on stuff she does, but obviously I don't coach her directly. What is it like coaching your own child, especially at the high school point?
Yeah.
Obviously, mine's still middle school. But what has that kind of experience been like, both from a pro and con standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, there's some cool things. Like I've got 3 kids, and I've helped with Little League and basketball and all that stuff in the past, and that's been pretty cool. But about the time my oldest got to about 9 or 10, I kind of stepped back because I knew that eventually down the road I'd be coaching him again. So we had a little bit of a break with that. But there's been some good and some conflict too. He's pretty hard-headed like me. The good thing is right now he's on offense, so he's a quarterback and a receiver, and so I don't coach him directly a whole lot. We do some crossover periods sometimes, and I get him. But it's been cool. I mean, like we have morning workouts, and so he's going to the same place I am. So he doesn't ever need a ride because he's always with me. So that part's good. But again, he's hard-headed, I'm hard-headed, and so there are some things where I'll talk to him about, hey, you need to make sure you're doing this, or I don't try to step on toes with the offensive coaches, but if I see something, then I am going to bring it up to him. So, and there's also times too, like in the coach's office where I choose or I know that I'm dad and coach at the same time, and sometimes if my son's name comes up, then I try to be quiet and kind of let other people do all the talking, because I don't want to be like I'm pushing my kid over somebody else.
Now, like, just out of curiosity, so if you're hitting those bullhead moments, is there any point you just blitz him to death when he's at quarterback?
Yeah, I did that a little bit. Yeah, and in the spring a little bit of his this past year, he had trial by fire a little bit. I guess they had a couple good plays, so I started sending some folks after him then.
Hey, I get it. I'm always curious about that, especially when you're the defense coordinator, your son's the quarterback. It's like, well, let's see what he can do.
That's right.
But I mean, like here, let's go this way first, because obviously you've been decent. I mean, you've coached a while, 19 years now. You have quite a bit of experience, multiple stints as DC, worked on the offensive side a little bit, worked middle school. What is, just out of curiosity, what is your typical off season like? Because I literally just got off the phone with my offense coordinator, and his response to me was, I have never watched this much film in the off season in my life, because he asked for some resources, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And then I have literally flooded him, because I mean, obviously doing this stuff, I get a lot of stuff. And so I've been able to kind of just load his stuff up. But what is your kind of like off-season process every year look like?
It's a little bit different every year. One thing is like this past year, I've been coaching indoor track. So I just finished up with indoor track this past week. So I've not really had a whole lot of time other than like maybe 2 weeks before the Christmas break. But usually what I do, the first thing that I do is I do a self scout, and I do a pretty comprehensive self scout, and I go through every game and look at all the stuff that we did good. I mean, I kind of do all the numbers, and I know that numbers don't tell the whole story, but I think that it tells something. And then you can look back at each game and see what the numbers actually did tell you when you look at the score, and then you can look back and see maybe we gave up more passing yards this game versus or this year versus the other years based off of personnel or scheme. And then what we do is me and the other coaches, we talk a little bit about what we did, what we've got, what's leaving, and what we have coming up as far as like this next year. I've got 5 starters that I've got to plan around. And what are we going to do there? Do we need to change a little bit what we do and how we do it? Does our coverages need to change? And then if we do, and if there's something just glaring there, then I got to work as far as I write down like coverages. Hey, we're going to put in cover 3. And so then I start, digging into different resources there. And I might call some folks that I know that run certain things. I gather a ton of film and rules. The good thing is the last couple of years, we've pretty much stayed the same. We have a huge, what we call a toolbox of coverages and fronts and stuff that we use. So we just kind of really see if we can pick up on some coaching points that for the current things that we already have. So that's kind of where we go, and then if we go through spring, and then I say, hey, 100%, we've got to do something different, depending on who we have. Then I'll do some more research.
Okay. No, that sounds good, Coach. Now I usually say this for the end, but I'll move this up, because especially this being a defensive talk and I didn't ask you before we go. I usually just do this blind, if you're in the press box or not. But whether it's you or whether it's somebody else, what do you have your press box people looking for on defense? Because I thought that was an area we struggled personally with last year, and that's something I'm looking to evaluate. Everybody's a little different on how they answer this, but kind of what do you look for on defense, or have your guy look for so you can kind of adjust as you need.
Yeah. So, well, we have 4 defensive coaches, and we have 2 on the field and 2 in the box. I'm on the field. Just I found out the first time that I was a coordinator, when I wanted to communicate something to the defensive players, and it had to go through another channel. I didn't like that because it didn't always get communicated the way that I wanted it to. So I like being able to talk to the kids directly, and also be able to talk to, if the kid needs to be calmed down or whatever reason, I can look him in the eye and say, hey, look, you need to adjust this, that, or whatever. So I'm on the field. I coach linebackers, and then I have one of our secondary guys is on the field as well. So then we have our defensive line coach. He's in the box, and then another secondary guy in the box. So we have, I try to get them to watch the other side of the field from where we are. And like the secondary coach, I want him to get the routes on the far side of the field. And they also, my secondary coach is also responsible for personnel. We see a lot of different personnel packages throughout, the games and stuff. So he's in charge of saying, hey, 21's in, 4's out, things like that, because we try to match personnel the best that we can. And then our defensive line coach he's watching the blocking schemes, make sure that I'm seeing the same thing he's seeing. So the good thing is, like, the secondary coach that's on the field, he's been doing it for 30 something years. So like he knows this stuff way better than I do, as far as in the, in the coverages and as far as making adjustments on a couple different things.
Now I care, because you mentioned how your experience at your secondary there is how much, especially in the off season for ideas, because I'll jump back to this, how much input do you allow for ideas and for thoughts and where they come from? And if somebody does, what do you ask them to bring you? Because obviously, and I think we both of us have done this a little long enough, you always have that one coach who will say, well, why don't you try this? And then they have nothing with it to back their point, or like no film, no resources. Like, okay, what do you, do you allow that a lot of input in the off season? And if so, what do you ask them to bring when you do that?
Yeah, well, I like to have as much input as possible. I've been on staffs where I felt like that my voice was not being heard, or I felt like that even though I was doing my part, that I was a small part of what we were doing. So I want to make sure that everybody has a voice. So one of the things I do is, as soon as I send out our self-scout information, I send out a questionnaire as well, and it's just got stuff on, like, what did you think we did good, what, some things that we did bad, what do we need to work on, and then, like, what are some things that I could work on, and then I make it where it's, I don't know who it is when they send it in, but then we'll meet together, and then we talk about, okay, so somebody said we need to run some cover 2, all right, why do we need to run cover 2 versus more man? And then if they explain something and it's good, okay, all right, then let's look at that. What do you know about, since you're bringing up cover 2, what do you know about it that's going to make it so good that we need to put it in? And then we just research the crap out of it. Now, I don't always agree, and I have the final say so from the head coach, that he lets me do pretty much whatever I want on defense. But I also make it where, if you bring me an idea, I'm going to hear you out. And I don't ever want it to be where I'm not hearing everybody out. And it's the same way when we're doing game plan on Sundays, or when we finalize the game plan. I want everybody to feel like, hey, this is 100% what we need to be doing, and I'm being heard. And a lot of times too, that me and one of the secondary coaches, we kind of dominate the conversation, not on purpose, but I make sure that a couple times during the meeting, I will call out to our D-line coach or another coach and say, hey, what do you feel about that? Or what do you think about the front wise? Are we running the right fronts here? Do you like that blitz? Just so that I'm getting input from everybody.
Now, you mentioned your self-scout there. Do you do any self-scouting in season? like obviously it's hard to do like a full unless you have enough coaches. It's hard to do a full comprehensive self
Yeah.
scout season. But do you at least do like a broad, okay, this is what I'm calling here, or this is how somebody's attacked? Like, is there anything you do to evaluate kind of as your season self scout wise?
Sometimes I do. I mean, every weekend I always do I always tag our film and put our calls in. And then I'll do a real brief look at, hey, what are we calling? We called a lot of, we were in a lot of 4-man front this game, in versus 3-man front, or we blitzed more. And we have a bye week every year, and just so happens the last 4 years it's been in the very middle of the year, so it's worked out. So on the bye week I do a self scout. I don't go just a ton of depth, but I'll see what we're calling. I'll do a little bit of some of the same stuff that I do at the end of the year, just kind of give me a broad overview of how we're doing. Now this coming year, we've already got our schedule for next year. It's in week 3, so I won't have as much data to go from, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
Okay. Now, I mean, there's 2 ways we can hit this out, and I'll come back if we have time scheme later. But I'm more like scheme to me at this point is scheme. I think obviously you can make adjustments. You're going to make adjustments to your personnel, what fits best, what against whatever. But I think the more I do this, the more I think game planning, weekly prep, and practice matter more than anything.
Yes.
And so let's start with the kind of like your game planning, your weekly prep. What is your process each week kind of look like in terms of getting ready? What do you look at? What do you want to handle? And I know you've done like a full clinic on this, so I'm asking you to condense this heavily, but like kind of what is your process? And I mean, and how much does that change year to year?
It doesn't change a whole lot overall. I tell you that the since I've been here at Gardendale, it's really not changed a whole lot, because we do the huddle assist, and if you can afford to do that, I would highly recommend that. When it first came out, I heard people doing it, but we didn't have the resources. But here we do, and that cuts a lot of the workout as far as the tedious work. You're putting the yard line and the hash and the down and distance and all that stuff. And I know that the huddle assist is not 100% accurate, but they're close enough that it helps. And usually we can pick up some the here and there, the down distance is wrong. We can fix all that stuff. But what we do is, as far as game planning wise, on either Saturday or Sunday morning, depends on how many films we have to break down. I start breaking it down, and what I do is I do the formation and the play, and I'm 100% in charge of that. I make sure that when we meet on Sunday as a staff, I have all our films that we're responsible for broken down by formation and play. And again, the whole assist does all the other little things. My secondary coach, he starts looking at all the pass routes. I've got the D-line coach. He's looking at blocking schemes. And then the other secondary coach, he's looking at like who the main player is, and he's starting to tag touches and who gets the ball. And then he's also responsible for stats. So like the opposing team stats. So I'll have him look up on the internet, like who's getting the ball and who do we need to stop. So that's kind of where we start as far as game planning wise. So going into Sunday, we meet at 2:00 on Sunday afternoons. We start. I'm a history teacher. My wife's a history teacher. So we do the whole who, what, when, where kind of deal. So we're looking at who they are, like who are their dudes that we're trying to stop. So on the board, we meet in this in one of the classrooms in our field house. And so on the big board, I write down who. And so we start writing down who are the dudes that we have to stop. Usually at our level, their quarterback's not really, really good. Either he can run or he can throw. We very rarely see a game managing quarterback. And then every week we're seeing a dude at running back and a dude at receiver, and sometimes both. And so, or do they have more than two receivers that we need to stop? So once we know who they have, then we start looking at what do they do. And so I do the whole huddle formation reports. And so I start categorizing as far as like their formations based off of how many times that we see it. And then what I'll do is I'll start grouping them together. Like we tag, when I tag the formations, it might be 2 by 2, and then where the back is, and then one way, 2 by 2, the back's on the other side. Trips with right, with the back on the left, vice versa. Then I start, does that even, once I start going through it more in depth, does the back placement even matter based off of what they do? And we spend almost the whole Sunday just getting lined up and where are their people. We spend hours on formation recognition, where their guys are, and then what we're going to do. And what we as a staff, what we have this little menu thing that we put together. I have one of my coaches, he puts it on a computer, and we have it on one of the TV screens in there. And like, let's say 2 by 2. Then we start, after we draw it up, we start drawing up what fronts we like, what coverages we like, what blitzes we like. And so that's put into, it's a Google sheet. And then we share that with all the coaches and the players as well. And so that kind of gets us going on Sunday. That's just the only thing that we do on Sunday. Okay. And then I can go. You going?
Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So once we do that on Sunday, on Monday, I look at the Big Ten. So that's like their Big Ten calls that they do. Sometimes it goes to 12, sometimes it's 8, but it's basically formation, motion, and play. What's their calls that they like to do the most, and we make sure we're able to stop those, and we rep the crap out of those on Mondays and Tuesdays and during our team time. Then on Wednesdays, I'll start looking at first downs. I'll go back through the film, and I'll chart every first down that they have, and I'll break it down by P and 10, and then drive 1st and 10. And on Thursday, I do 3rd down. Okay, that's just kind of an overview of what we do. I mean, we get a little more complicated than that, but it's kind of the big picture, who they are, what do they do, then more specifically what they do, and then I get into down and distance more Wednesday and Thursday. I used to do a whole lot of first, 2nd down, 3rd down, all that stuff way earlier in my career, but I don't spend near as much time on that anymore as I used to.
Okay. Now, are you getting out of curiosity, because it's starting to be more common, and I've seen a little bit more here too, and I think some of it's just people trying to keep crap to their sideline. But are you seeing a lot more like formation in the boundary, a lot more like twins, trips, all that little stuff in the boundary? Kind of what are you kind of seeing there in terms of what's attacking the formation boundary?
Well, I think just in my opinion, I think offenses will do that really depending upon what kind of defense you are. Are you a field boundary defense, or are you just lining up by formation? And we're going to line up based off of formation. I don't care if you're to the boundary or to the field. I'm not going to have an extra guy to the field just because that's the strength. We go to where people are. We have some teams that do it more than others, and if we recognize that's the big thing of what they do, we try to teach the kids, hey, we're not going to totally overload the boundary here. They might have trips and a running back to the boundary. I don't need to get everybody over there because that's what they're trying to do to us. So we try to educate our kids to recognize why the other team's doing what they do.
Okay. I'm just curious, because I know we're starting to see that more, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, NFL, there is really no boundary. Let's just be honest about that.
Correct.
But even in college, you see a lot more trips in the boundary, whether they're running screens or runs into the boundary. And I know, like, there's some teams we saw this year. I think they ran a lot of formation in the boundary, but I think some of that was just trying to keep stuff to their sideline. That's the other thing we kind of noticed as we were kind of going. You mentioned your weekly prep there, but how does that affect your practices throughout the week? What is your kind of, especially your defensive practice portion? Because obviously said you guys are kind of split offensively and defensively.
Yes.
You don't you are fortunate enough to have enough staff, but what is your kind of process throughout the week look like as a defensive staff?
Okay. So again, our big day that we meet's on Sunday. We do a little bit of the stuff over on Saturday that you're responsible for. We practice on Sundays as well. So we have Sunday is a super long day for us, but it ends up working out better for us as the week goes. So we come in at 2:00 on Sunday. We do our staff meet. We do our defensive staff meeting. Then we go meet all together, the whole staff, offense and defense, and we kind of talk about injuries, personnel, kind of what's going on that week. If it might be homecoming week, or maybe we're going into the game's a 2.5 hour trip. We've got to figure out buses on Friday, all that great stuff that goes into coaching high school football. Then the players will come in at 5:00 and they're there for about 3 hours. But the kids know too that it's going to work out so that they have more time off at the end of the week as well. So we'll meet and lift, watch film, do all that stuff from 5 to 8:00. We have a 1 hour practice on Sundays. And it's a very general practice, really, like whether it be week 10 or week third round of the playoffs, they pretty much look the same. We might just shorten things down as the year goes on, but it's we're doing corrections, a tackle circuit, just any time, and then we'll do a little bit of 7-on-7 and inside, and that's it. We're off the field in an hour. On Mondays, we have JV games on Monday nights, and but even though we have enough staff to go both ways, we don't have a separate JV staff. So over half of our coaches will have to leave at a certain time, and especially if the game is an hour away, they've got to leave and get on the bus with those JV kids, and the coordinators and the head coach will stay a little bit far behind. So Monday practice is about 18 periods. Again, the big thing for us is we're trying to finish installing the game plan. We're doing our Big 10. On Tuesday is our big work day where it's 24 periods. Let me go back to the only day that we go full pads is on Tuesday. We are shorts and shoulder pads Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. So Tuesday we're full pads. We get after it pretty good. We'll have a little bit extra team time. We'll go maybe one more period inside. And then Wednesday, we do the whole no sweat Wednesdays. It's kind of been a thing for the last 5 or 6 years. We do a real quick hour-long practice. We get the kids in and out. We also call it bus day, so the kids are able to ride the bus home. So at 3, there's no having to get rides for kids. There should be no excuses for kids to have rides. And then on Thursday is a little bit longer. It might be 16 periods to 18 periods, depending on what we've got to do. But we still going to hit all the special teams and that as well.
You want to talk a little bit more about No Sweat Wednesday? Because I've heard No Sweat Thursday. I've heard No Sweat Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Kind of what that entails for you guys.
Yeah. So our head coach was at Hoover High School in Birmingham for several years, and they implemented that before he got here, and he really liked it. So what that means for us is we're going to do 12 to 13 periods. Our athletic period is the last period of the day. All right. And so our school gets out at 3:05, and I think fifth period starts at like 1:45. So we tell our kids on Wednesday, like, we want you dressed and ready to go at 2:00. So they've got to bust it to get down from the school to the field house, get changed, and get on the field. Of course, we're wearing shorts and shorts and helmets. And so the big thing that we do is we'll go out there, and our special teams coach gets them all out there, and he does all the substitutions. All right. And so he'll get them in and out, in and out, in and out. And then what we do is we have 3 different periods or 3 different sections of team for like about 10 to 15 minutes. So I have a script that I go by, and I have it's by where we are on the field. Okay. Well, I start the first 5 plays are all red zone inside the 10-yard line. All right, so we do that. We'll do that for 10 minutes. Usually that's timed, and then we'll go through 2 special teams. We usually go kickoff return, then we'll go back, and then I'll do another 10 minutes of scripted plays. We'll go back, we'll do punt return, and then we'll do another special teams thing at the end. But again, the big thing that we're wanting to do on defense is we're just doing formation alignment. We're like, we barely want them to be doing anything other than calling out any of our checks, any of that stuff. Now on the offensive end, I barely look down there, but they're running plays is what they're doing against bags. So again, the big thing is it's more of a polished day than anything else.
Now, I mean, obviously, before we go, I do want to hit a little bit of skiing because we do have some time. You obviously describe yourself as 3-3 multiple. Obviously, I mean, I would say it's most defenses nowadays are pretty multiple, especially if you're an odd front, because I mean, there's a lot you can do and there's easy adjustments, whether you're tight, bear, eagle. Well, there's a billion different adjustments you can do. I think to me the real interesting play nowadays is the secondary. So that's why I kind of asked you some of that before. Obviously, you're a base 2 read team, add some rip Liz match and some press man.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you're 2 read, but what made you expand your alternate packages to like the rip Liz? Why not quarters, or something like that, or some sort of cover 7? Like why was rip Liz your secondary kind of package coverage wise?
I think it's a good compliment, and I think we like to pattern read. We don't all of our coverages are either pattern read or man. A few years ago, when I first became defense coordinator, we were like coverage wise, we were drop zone, and we were lit up pretty good a few different games. And after doing that, I was like, there's got to be something different because we have some good guys in the secondary, and they are just absolutely eating us alive, whether it be like short yards, finding zone, or hitting us over the top. So we chose to go to coverages that are going to be a little more tight, and we wanted incompletions. We value incompletions more than trying to get a pick. Now, I like picks and I want picks, but we think that by playing a tighter coverage, we can force incompletions and do a better job. And for the most part, it's worked out for us. And also just to change the presentation as well. Like, so when we go rip this match, we spin to that. So we'll line up in like we're in a cover 2 shell. We always start too high, and then we'll spin or go to what we're going to end up in.
Okay. And then like just continue with that is obviously I have a friend who's been on my channel who's done some rip Liz videos for me, who's does a lot of research on it. Where did you pull your rip Liz information from? Because everybody's a little different on where they get it from. Obviously, Coach Bass has a bunch of resources. With you living in Alabama, you obviously have a very easy resource down the road. Where did you pull your rip Liz stuff from?
When I first started learning, I started learning from the Saban tree. I used to live in Tuscaloosa when Saban first got to Tuscaloosa. It was the same year that I moved there, and so he was pretty open as far as when we worked camps. He would have coaches that were would more glad to talk to us, high school coaches, and so I learned a good bit there. He has a clinic every spring. I would go to that just because it was across town, and started learning. But again, I was not a coordinator at the time then. I was just kind of gathering information. But when I became a coordinator at another school, and like I said, we were going from cover 2, cover 3, cover 4. That's what we base out of. And then we decided, hey, we have got to change what we do. That kind of fit a little bit better our kids. And so I looked there. And then the last couple of years, I got some resources from Pruitt when he was at Tennessee. Somebody on Football Scoop, I cannot remember who it was, did a really, really good.
Oh, the got it. Who talk about is it like Indiana Wesleyan's DC or something like that? That's a pretty good clinic right there.
Yeah, he did a really good job, and we used more of the rules that he uses than like what Saban uses. So I mean, it's not, cover one, but it's pretty close from what we do. Our corners are pretty much going to stay on the number one receiver, like every snap that we run Ripley's match, except for like one during the year. Hardly any time does the number one receiver run a shallow route anymore. Yeah. 10 or 15 years ago, we would see that a pretty good bit when the Tony Franklin system first came out, but we don't see that anymore. It's the safeties and the strong safety that we've got to spend the majority of our time with.
Okay. And was that, and just on it from a difficulty level, I mean, obviously two read, and there are similarities, but was that how much time did you have to invest in the Rip Liz compared to the two read? Was it
a lot?
A lot. Was because I was wondering how easy of a transition that was for you guys, or an addition.
Well, like I said, it's totally, I mean, it's different. I mean, because you're talking about a middle of the field closed coverage. We're talking about an outside leverage versus inside leverage. We're talking about reading number two. What does he do? Depending on where he goes. I mean, our safety, when you're looking at what two read, you're seeing if he goes out to swap over. Yeah. Okay. Now in Ripley's match, if he goes inside underneath, then he's passing him off. So it's almost total opposite. And so that's something we have to spend a lot of time on. Now, again, here in Alabama, we're very, very blessed. We get a lot of time with our kids. We don't do a whole lot like in January and February, but starting March, when the weather gets pretty decent outside, for the most part, we'll get outside here and there. And what we'll do is we'll during our athletic period, we'll start our teach time. We also too, once a week in March, we'll start teaching with our kids in the classroom a little bit before school. We'll start going through some meetings and doing some installs. And then we also have spring football. I know not every state has spring football, but we have it. And we put a lot of emphasis on trying to get as much covered in spring football as we can. Then in the summer, we reteach everything. And so the one thing that I do in the summer is I make sure that if we have 3 or 4 main coverages, that when we do 7-on-7 or 7-on-7 with ourselves, I will spend a whole week. Like 1 week will be Ripley's match, and we won't run any other coverage but that. And we'll run nothing but 2 read. And then we'll have like 1 trips check that we have per week. That's all we do. And then the next week we'll flip it. We'll go to the other one. The next week we'll go to the other one. And then when we come back through the summer, we'll do the same thing. So that when we start fall camp, these guys have been introduced. This has been pounded in their head over and over and over and over again. And then, but again, we do this install schedule is there too, so that we introduce everything over and over again, just like they've never had it before.
Okay. So like last thing with this, and you mentioned your install schedule there, is how much is that? I mean, because the way you mentioned your install schedule, it kind of almost sounds like the air raid. Okay, we're going to hit on these, then we're going to come back to these, then we're going to come back to these. There might be some small wrinkles with it, but we're going to reteach what we have to make sure we're going to. Would you say that's kind of an accurate description of kind of how your install schedule is?
100%.
And then how in depth and how tightly do you stay to that schedule?
So yeah, I try to say that we're playing offense on defense, because we're not a blitz every down, but we want to we want to attack, and we want to make sure we're bringing it to the offense. So when I coached offense several years ago, the air raid was the end thing. And so when I studied all that stuff, I kind of brought the same, the teach schedule over to how we do it. And so we do the same thing. Again, we teach it and repeat, teach and repeat, teach and repeat. And then we try to stay to it, but usually once a year as we're going through, hey, we need to spend one more day on 2 read, or maybe we're running on special a trips coverage. Their kids are just not getting it, but we know that we have to have that coverage in. So we spend a little more time on it. So I want to say this past year, we did a little more of that. We kind of had to slow things down in fall camp and emphasize certain things. And we maybe we just didn't get to totally install everything that we wanted to, but we would pick it up later on down the road and get it.
Okay. All right, Coach. Well, I thank you for coming on. Coaches, his Twitter will be in the bio, so please give Coach a follow. That'd be greatly appreciated. If there's any point you want to go back and listen to, obviously his offseason process, the press box, taking input, self-scouting, formation, or mini talk on formation in the boundary, kind of what he's seeing, why he thinks he's seeing it. No Sweat Wednesday. If you want to go back to any of that, all those tags will be in the bio. Make sure you check out our sponsors affiliates. That's below. Also, like, share, subscribe so people can find this and listen to Coach talk. And that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.